You arrived. The one they marked long before you even knew their intentions. The one they circled, studied, misjudged, whispered about behind closed doors. The one they believed they could break with numbers, manipulation, rituals, gossip, envy, and emotional traps disguised as care. And yet here you are. You are sitting upright with that quiet awareness in your eyes. You don't look wounded. You look awakened, and that shift alone has them uneasy. They are pacing now, reading into every move you make as if their survival depends on decoding you. In their world, it does. Let's talk about why an entire coordinated circle is panicking over one person. Let's talk about why 13 individuals working together still couldn't accomplish what they planned against you. Every tactic they used, spiritual manipulation, emotional baiting, staged drama, fake unity, inverted sympathy, collapsed the moment you stopped playing the role they assigned to you. You dismantled an entire coordinated effort without lifting a weapon. The only thing you raised was your awareness, and they still cannot understand how it happened. The truth is simple. They never expected you to recognize the pattern. They believed you would remain confused. They assumed you would stay desperate for approval. They expected you to swallow the guilt they fed you like medicine. They never imagined you would step outside their influence and begin seeing the design behind their behavior. You were never supposed to notice the repetition. But you did, and once recognition entered your mind, everything they built around you began to distort. At first, they didn't look like a manipulative group. They rarely do. They appeared as people who were supportive, interested, spiritually aligned, emotionally available. People who spoke about growth, unity, connection, and loyalty. They said all the right things while quietly observing you like an experiment. They didn't attach themselves to you by accident. They sensed something in you before you fully sensed it yourself. They weren't drawn to your presence alone. They were drawn to your empathy, your insight, your potential influence. You thought these connections were natural. You believed coincidences were harmless. You assumed attention meant genuine interest, but behind every compliment was comparison. Behind every question was assessment. Behind every moment of praise was a quiet measurement of how much control they had over your emotional state. 13 minds subtly competing to shape your perception. They fed you small doses of doubt, disguised as guidance. Nothing they did was random, it wasn't casual. It was coordinated influence disguised as community. The world rarely prepares people for that level of psychological strategy. Manipulation often arrives wrapped in kindness, emotional language, spiritual vocabulary, and calm expressions. One of the strongest forms of control is making someone question their own inner compass. And when a group senses strength in a single individual, the instinct is rarely admiration. The instinct is containment. At first they tried to contain you quietly. Subtle remarks, thoughtful concerns, jokes that didn't quite feel like jokes, advice that caused you to shrink rather than expand. Slowly, you began noticing the pattern. You didn't want to believe it, but the pieces kept aligning. Every time you felt inspired, someone inserted pessimism. Every time you set a boundary, someone reacted as if you committed a crime. Every time you shared a goal, someone tried to redirect you toward something smaller. Whenever life blessed you, someone in the circle suddenly became distant, annoyed, or threatened. And every time you pulled away to breathe, they surrounded you with exaggerated concern. You were not imagining it. You were surrounded by a coordinated emotional ecosystem, 13 individuals moving like one organism. You thought you were dealing with personality differences, misunderstandings, or bad timing. You did not see the quiet coordination between them. Why? Because they relied on your empathy as a weapon against you. They counted on your compassion to keep you doubting yourself before doubting them. They trained you to apologize for being hurt. They made you feel guilty for trusting your instincts. But eventually something shifted. Not dramatically, not loudly. There was simply a moment, a precise moment, when the version of you that tolerated everything finally cracked. It wasn't anger, it was realization, a silent internal click. You remember? The moment. You remember the thought that passed through your mind, "I'm done." That was the moment everything changed. You didn't confront them, you didn't expose them, you didn't warn them. You simply withdrew the emotional access they depended on. Your absence became more powerful than their collective presence. You stopped reacting. You stopped chasing. You stopped explaining. You gave them nothing to hold on to, and that nothing shook them harder than any confrontation ever could. The dynamic collapsed because you stepped outside its gravitational pull. People who rely on emotional control panic when their target stops responding. Without your reactions, their power evaporates. Being a one-person war machine doesn't mean aggression or revenge. It means endurance. It means clarity. It means refusing to participate in your own destruction. You started questioning what they taught you. You began observing instead of absorbing. You paid attention to actions rather than believing words. You trusted patterns instead of excuses. That was the beginning of their collapse. Because manipulative groups require a center of influence to control. You were that center, not because you were weak, but because you were perceptive, sensitive, thoughtful, and capable of reflecting truth back to others. Your presence exposed things people preferred to hide. They gathered around you because your energy gave them roles to play. They behaved as if you were orbiting them, but in reality, they were orbiting you. The moment you stepped away, the circle shattered. Suddenly they were no longer unified. Without you, their coordination collapsed. They were never truly united. They were united by their focus on you, and now they are panicking. Not because you exposed them, not because you retaliated, but because you became unpredictable. You stopped responding like the person they trained you to be. You stopped justifying disrespect. You stopped repeating old cycles. You stopped betraying yourself. Your clarity dismantled everything. Simple actions created chaos among them, not answering a message, not returning a call, pulling your energy back, staying calm when they expected reactions, setting boundaries without long explanations, choosing peace without apology. Those small decisions disrupted their entire structure. Because healed people cannot be manipulated the same way. Healing is the weapon nobody talks about. You didn't defeat 13 people with anger. You defeated them with awareness. You defeated them with boundaries. You defeated them with self-respect. You defeated them with growth. They coordinated influence. You responded with transformation, and transformation always wins. What scares them now is your independence, your emotional distance, your ability to think for yourself, your refusal to fold, your willingness to walk alone. They are not panicking because you are dangerous. They are panicking because you are free. Freedom does not function within manipulative systems. Their entire structure depended on one belief, that you needed them. Now that illusion is gone. When one person quietly leaves a manipulative structure, the group fractures. When that person evolves, the structure collapses. They are replaying conversations, analyzing old messages, questioning one another. Your absence created conflict they cannot resolve. Now some of them pretend you were the problem all along. This is a classic defense mechanism. When manipulators lose access to someone they controlled, they rewrite reality to protect their image. But the cracks are obvious. Their stories don't match. Contradictions appear. The unity they once displayed dissolves. Some are angry, some are embarrassed. Some are anxious because they cannot predict you anymore. Others are quietly terrified because they finally see the truth. You were never the weak one. You were the strongest person in the room. While they were busy manipulating, gossiping, and strategizing, you were growing. You were learning. You were healing. You were evolving. You were doing the internal work they avoided. Your growth exposes their stagnation. Your transformation highlights their refusal to change. And that realization is unbearable. But what unsettles them the most is this. You didn't replace them. You didn't search for another group. You didn't chase new validation. You built stability within yourself, and manipulative systems cannot compete with someone who no longer needs approval. You broke the cycle internally. You stopped confusing loyalty with self-sacrifice. You stopped accepting disrespect as normal. You stopped carrying guilt for choosing yourself. You stopped bending to keep others comfortable. You stopped giving access to people who misuse it. You became someone they never believed could exist, and that version of you terrifies them. They understand something now. You see through their patterns. You recognize their tactics. They cannot fool you again. That is why they still talk about you even when you are not present. They need to convince themselves that they were right about you. Because admitting your growth would mean admitting their failure. You were the glue holding their structure together. They bonded over discussing you, analyzing you, comparing themselves to you. Without you, their conversations lose direction. Their unity dissolves. From your perspective, what happened was not accidental. You healed the parts of yourself they depended on. Once that internal programming dissolved, their influence dissolved with it. That truth is unbearable for them, because it means the power dynamic was never real. It existed only because you had not recognized your own strength yet. Now you do, and they feel it. Everything they projected onto you has returned to them. Everything they tried to bury in you is now rising within them. They are experiencing the consequences of their own behavior. Truth doesn't argue. Truth simply lands, and when it lands, it hits the mind first, then the conscience. The aftermath for you is not loud victory, it is quiet clarity. Life rearranges itself around the person you have become. Peace becomes normal. Chaos becomes distant. You begin meeting people who speak from authenticity rather than insecurity. You attract individuals who do not need to diminish you in order to feel powerful. This shift is not coincidence. It is recalibration. When you remove manipulative influence from your life, your energy stops bending to accommodate it. 13 people could not break you, because what they thought was isolation was actually preparation. They mistook your quiet for confusion. They mistook your distance for collapse. In reality, you were rebuilding yourself. You were reorganizing your life into something they could never influence again. Now they watch from a distance with a kind of silent recognition they will never admit. Seeing you stable destroys their narrative. Seeing you peaceful disrupts their assumptions. Seeing you grounded exposes their instability. Your rise was not revenge. It was recovery. You didn't break them. They broke themselves trying to break you. And the moment they realized you didn't need to fight them to win, that was the moment the real panic began. Because your healing closed the chapter. Your growth ended the story. And now your path opens in ways that finally reflect who you truly are.